Hello, I'm Mike Field,
I'm Mike Butler.
and welcome to Forgotten Cinema Lead Up. Each episode, we highlight a film from a popular series and follow it all the way to the most recent release. We'll discuss what we love about the movie, or perhaps don't love about it, but we'll always recommend you revisit it, even the not so good ones. So let's get into it. Mike Butler, how are you?
I've been good. I've been in my Forgotten Cinema hibernation cave, just waiting for us to start up again, and here we are.
Pathetic. I mean, this is our first recording. Um, and since we did the forgotten horror stuff in October of no September, right? No, when did we record?
Released in
August
October,
of
but we recorded in
2023.
August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we are, if you're watching this, you can see that we are not in the same room together because, as you see behind me, the studio is currently under renovation. Not because we're renovating the studio, but because the Fields have to fix a crack in the basement.
And
So
studio
um,
renovation is just a happy accident.
it is. It absolutely is. So we've got a little. Where is it? We got the little on-air sign right there that I'm pointing to in the video. And then once the crack gets fixed, the studio is going to get a little bigger, a little wider, and then that's where Mike and I will be in person talking about all sorts of stuff. So Butler, I explained a little bit about Lead Up, but why don't you, if you want, do you want to flesh that out a little bit? You want to explain what we're trying to do here?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, Forgotten Cinema is where we talk about forgotten films that seem to be forgotten by audiences, but we wanted to, for our patrons and just to kind of expand the brand, we want to go out and we want to talk about other things as well. So Lead Up is our way to kind of talk about films like, let's say, for instance, Ghostbusters has Afterlife coming out in March. We can talk about Ghostbusters 1, 2,
Not Afterlife, Frozen Empire.
Frozen Empire. We
That's
can talk
in,
about 1,
yeah.
2, Answer the Call, and Afterlife leading up to Frozen Empire. And then
Butler's fighting the Answer the Call one.
we gotta do it, but I wasn't thinking about it when I started this.
It's an alternate universe. Alternate universe.
So we're going to talk about, for Ghostbusters, we're going to talk about all those and we'll lead up to the actual ones. These are exclusive episodes. So anyone watching this is almost certainly a patron, or they've ripped this and pirated this episode somehow, in which case I'm super happy you guys cared enough to pirate anything. Like, that's just really cool.
It's very nice. It's very nice of them. Very nice to pirate.
And then our live episode, or we're going to do a live episode for Frozen Empire where we'll listen to your guys' chats, or read your guys' chat at the same time. We'll have a discussion with you guys and ourselves about the episode. You guys get first tips on that, and then we'll put those out probably a few days later on YouTube as a way to entice more people to the Patreon, I guess, and talk about newer
films. Me and you are going to have to actually go to the theater to watch this now.
That's right.
No, I didn't think about that. I have to leave the house. Ugh.
I'm so sorry.
All right, so we promised that this is the first episode, so we promise that all these episodes are going to take, we're not going to have this 10-minute introduction. So let's get into the movie. We are obviously starting off with Ghostbusters, and as we always do with the show, we start off with the facts. So Mike, Ghostbusters has a runtime of 105 minutes. It's rated PG. The production budget is $25 to $30 million. Release date was actually June 8th, 1984, which I want to get into that a little bit because I didn't realize how many movies were released around then or what it went up against. Its opening weekend, it did 13.5 million. Domestic, it did 243 million. International, 53 million. And then worldwide, 296 million. So, I mean, in that 13.5 million, I mean, if you adjust that for inflation, what do you think that is? 40, 30, 35?
40, 45, yeah. But
yeah,
I mean, no one knew what this was that first.
Of course not.
That's why that end was impressive.
But which is surprising that it came out in the summer. If they didn't really anticipate that business, but they still gave it a summer release. So
I think they could probably see what they had in their hands.
Maybe,
but yeah,
maybe. I mean, also this is 40 years ago.
Yep,
it's the 40th anniversary coming up. So
I think that's why they really tried to push this one, Frozen Empire, to come out this
year. Sure. But like, here's the thing, like, back then they're not analytical about the release dates. They're not analytical about what's going to come out when, who's going to be big, who has Instagram followers, obviously, like stuff like that. So I think you're just taking shots. So, in terms of like, let's just put it in June 8th. So
I think you still know a summer movie when you see one. But yeah,
Of course. Okay, that makes sense.
because by
So
now
production company
Star
was
Wars has come
yeah.
out.
Good. No, go ahead.
Oh, by now the Star Wars and Jaws and Indiana Jones have come out, so you kind of know. All right,
Right.
this is a summer movie.
Right. Production company was Columbia Delphi Productions and Black Rhino, and it was distributed by Columbia Pictures. So I said it came out on the 8th, and that did you see what it came up against?
You got to tell me. I try not to look at that
Really?
because I want
Okay.
you to be like, do you know this and this?
So it went up against Beach Street. No, that's not the one. It went up against Gremlins. It came out the
Oh,
same
really?
day as Gremlins. Yeah, and it beat Gremlins by like a million. Like Gremlins did like 12 or something like that. So yeah.
Gremlins is not a Christmas movie?
Well, not it didn't come out at Christmas. No.
That blows my mind right there. Why set the whole thing at Christmas time then? That's
I
bizarre.
don't know. Well, maybe again, I don't know the window between theatrical and home release,
Right.
but maybe they put it out in June because they thought it was going to be for rent and Christmas time. So maybe
Okay.
that's what they were planning. But who knows? But that's also not it, because the week before, the 6th of June, you had Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock.
Ooh,
Like that's a nice two. That's like a big double weekend there.
yeah.
And June 8th is actually the third weekend of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So
Damn.
you had a big like couple weeks there. So just I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty
You
crazy.
also had yeah, exactly. You had also had Once Upon a Time in America that came out on June 1st. June 15th, the week after, you had Under the Volcano and Careful He Might Hear You. Those were limited releases, and you probably never heard of them.
Nope.
And that's why, because Gremlins and Ghostbusters and Star Trek 3 and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom were probably just killing at the box office.
I mean, I heard
This
the
movie,
other one that you said.
what's that?
Once Upon a Time in
Oh,
Brooklyn. What
Once Upon a Time. Yeah, no, that's
yeah, I mean,
Once Upon a Time in America. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Time in America, that's what I meant to say.
That,
That's a
but
bigger
that's
movie.
not a summer film. That's not a
No,
summer
but
movie.
that's a well-known film.
Sure, absolutely. This film was directed by Ivan Reitman. He did Twins, Meatballs, Stripes, a bunch of other stuff. Written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. I think Reitman was there too as well. There was other people that kind of like
The way Reitman
pitching in
tells it,
there.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
they,
what's his face? Oh my god, Aykroyd wrote the first draft, obviously, and then I
yeah,
think that's why Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis kinda came in to clean it up because it was a mess and a huge, giant script that was, like,
yeah.
unfilmable, and so the 2 of them kinda worked on it with Aykroyd to pare it down.
Absolutely, yeah. So Aykroyd's done Blues Brothers, Spies Like Us. Ramis has done Animal House, Groundhog Day, Caddyshack. Cinematographer was Laszlo Kovacs, who's done Easy Rider, Five Easy Pieces, just name a few. Shampoo, if you've ever seen that. Composer was Elmer Bernstein, who was nominated for 14 Oscars, Butler, but won once for Thoroughly Modern Millie. So that's pretty impressive. Edited by David E. Blewett and Sheldon Kahn. Blewett has been nominated for an Oscar for The Competition. He also did DC Cab. Anyone remember that? Kahn has been nominated for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Out of Africa. And this was produced by Reitman as well. You had I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think pretty much everybody knows in this movie. Bill Murray is Peter Venkman. Dan Aykroyd is Raymond Stantz, or Ray Stantz. Harold Ramis is Egon Spangler. Ernie Hudson and Wisdom Zedmore. I would assume a lot of people know their credits, but do you remember? Do you know that Dan Aykroyd was nominated for an Oscar for
No.
acting?
For
Do
acting?
you remember the movie? Yeah, do you know the movie?
I just
He
said
didn't
I
win.
don't.
Driving Miss Daisy.
He was nominated for that? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Murray was nominated for Lost in Translation, so
That I knew. But yeah.
yeah. I'm a little upset that Ernie Hudson is in the Quantum Leap reboot because I don't like any of that
Quantum Leap
reference.
reboot.
So
They had to put him in because he's an '80s guy, so they threw him in.
I don't like anything about that show. I watched the 20 minutes of the first episode. I was just like, pass.
I watched the first 2 episodes, and then
Ugh.
I had to go walk away.
So those are the 4 Ghostbusters that I just mentioned. You had Sigourney Weaver and Dana Barrett, which is actually one of her first comedic roles. Looks slightly comedic. I didn't realize that she was nominated for Aliens
Oh, is she
for
nominated
an
for that?
Oscar.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew Working Girl and Girls in the Mist, but I didn't know
Right.
Aliens. Rick Moranis is Louis Tully from Parenthood, Spaceballs, and the Honey I Shrunk the Kids movies. Annie Potts is Janine Melnitz. You might know her from the TV show Young Sheldon, which is out now. William Atherton is Walter Peck, who's actually in the new one, is in Frozen Empire. I didn't realize.
I thought I saw a clip of him in the trailer, and I was
Yeah.
hoping.
He's in that. He's also in Real Genius, which is an awesome movie, and the first two Die Hards. And then you had people that you probably recognize. Yes, Alice Drummond, who's a librarian from Ace Ventura. Yeah, Gene Kasem. This is like her first and like one of her only movies. The only reason I mention her is because I always remember her as Nick's new wife in Cheers, as Nick Tortelli's new wife in Cheers. If you watch the Cheers TV show, I always
Okay.
remember her there. And then I guess like Ron Jeremy's in there somewhere. So if you find him, he's there. So he's not like he's in the background or something like
Yeah, he's a
that.
background character, yeah. I
Yeah,
think for
exactly.
Atherton, you forgot Sugarland Express was such a that episode we did.
Listen, I was trying to streamline the credit process here. That's what I'm doing. I was told that was a little too long. Well, we both thought that, but sometimes it gets a little too long. So I'm trying to
It does, yeah.
streamline that process. But plus, we also have a lot of notes from this movie in terms of facts because the movie is so popular, because it's so older.
Oh, I couldn't find anything in this movie.
Well, I know you know it was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. And do you know which Academy Awards those were, those categories?
If I check my
Don't look
notes.
them up. Don't look them up. Don't wait for the translation.
The translation. I think it was best effects and not makeup. It's a song? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
best
song.
song. Best visual effects and best song. But yeah, and I didn't realize it was a quick turnaround. They filmed the end of October 1983 to February, beginning of February 84, which meant that they had a speed rush that edit for the June 8th opening.
Yeah, I know the special effects guys had 11 months because I watched the special feature on the Blu-ray where they said they had 11 months to build basically a new studio and get all the effects out in time. And they
Yeah.
were doing effects while film reels were coming in and like freaking out that
Mhm.
they couldn't keep up with the film that kept piling up.
So, I mean, where would you like to start off? I mean, because there's so many places we can start. I mean,
I
I
have
know we
no
both
idea.
like
Like,
the movie.
I was super happy we were doing this movie, and then as we were doing this movie, I was like, how do I talk about like we do forgotten films, and it's so easy to like, what do you like about it? Why do you think it's forgotten?
Yeah,
This movie is
yeah.
phenomenal. This is my favorite comedy of all time. I think this is one of the best films of all time in terms of like what it's trying to do and what it did and accomplished. Like I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on where you want to start? Like, I guess we could start with the special effects and how we think
Well,
that held
let me
up.
tell you what I hated about this movie. uh, I thought that we can start with the special effects. Very expensive. I one of my notes here is that Slimer cost $300,000 and took 6 months to design. It's like $300,000 back then
Yeah.
is a lot of money for
I
just Slimer's in one big scene and then that's it. And then he's eating hot dogs at the end. That's about it.
And then he pops that at the end toward the credits, yeah. I heard
Yeah.
the special feature I was watching was saying that the special effects who said the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man suit was $20,000 per suit, and they had 4 of them. And
They destroyed them all.
they kept having to, like, destroy him when he gets burned on top of the building, and they had one
Yeah.
guy as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and he kept messing up over and over for the first 3 suits. He kept slipping and
Hmm.
falling, so they couldn't get him to burn. So they had to hire this other extra to come up and be like, "All right, can you do this?" And he's like, "I can do it in one." And they're like, "You only have one chance. That's it. There's no more suits." And he did it. He got up on this. I guess he had to get on this little stool and jump for the rail of the apartment building. And he actually did it. And they were able to go cut. And they were able to do it without resorting to a backup plan.
Nice.
But
Nice.
twenty
I
thousand
did.
dollars suit that you blow up
Yeah.
basically.
So that's 20,000 a suit. So that's 80,000. So let's call that a straight 100,000 for all that stuff right there. 300,000 just for Slimer. I mean, I mean, it's a big budget. I mean, 25 to 30 million back then. Again, I know I keep saying that, but that's
That's
probably
a
like
big
a
budget back then.
$68
Yeah.
million film. Yeah, no, don't, absolutely.
It's not only
Yeah.
like the I guess the one thing, like, it's another thing we can talk about is the one thing that has blown my mind every time I've watched this film since I think probably since we started doing Forgotten Cinema and talking more about films is someone financed this film. Someone was like, read the script and went, "Yes, this is gonna make me a lot of money." And it's such like you look back on it now and it's like, of course it is. It's the greatest film like ever. But back then, this is such a weird comedy with horror elements. Like the ghosts are actually spooky. It's an action movie, but it's not an action. It's so weird, and like your end villain, your final boss is a giant marshmallow, and someone went, "Put this give this man a lot of money to do this. So give these guys a lot of money to do this movie. It just blows my mind every time I watch it that the producers really were able to like had the forethought or this ability to see this diamond in this silly script.
Well, one of the notes I had was that the film was actually intended for an adult audience, and that it took them by surprise when children started loving it. So, I mean, so maybe it was a happy accident kind of thing. Like it just, it was meant when maybe it was meant one way, and then kids glommed onto it, and they didn't get, like movies now, and I hate doing this, but movies now, if this comes out now, this movie's probably really cynical. It's probably got a lot of, it's got a little curse words here and there. It's probably got a lot of toilet humor a little bit. Like there's some of that in there in this. Like, I mean, I obviously 1984, I'm 9 when this came out, so I probably didn't see this until I was 12 or 13. I didn't know what was going on when Stance is getting molested in his sleep. Like when the ghost takes off his pants. Like I had no
Right.
idea what was happening, but it took me years later when I was older to figure out. Oh, okay. So you just don't think of that stuff. So there's not a lot of that in the movie. So I think maybe that's probably why kids glommed onto it. And if kids love something, it's going to make a lot of money because parents are going to keep bringing them to the theater.
Right, like, I grew up with this movie, but
Okay.
like you said, like, when I was younger, I didn't know what was going on with that pants scene or and, like, the only thing that, growing up I've been watching it since, I was, like, 1. My parents wouldn't let me watch The Librarian turning into a monster because that was the one thing they thought was gonna be too scary until, like, I was, like, 10
It,
or
it
11.
is. If you
It
don't
it is scary,
realize
that's the
that,
thing, yeah.
it's a jump scare. It's a jump scare at the end, at the
Yeah,
beginning. But once you know that, then after that, it's fine.
yeah.
It's kind of whatever. I know we're on special effects, so I didn't realize that because Boss Film Studios was doing the special effects work. They were splitting the work between Ghostbusters and 2010, the year we made contact, which is a movie that we did in the main show for Forgotten Cinema
Right.
a couple seasons ago, or towards the end of the first run, I guess. So yeah, so I didn't realize they were splitting time. Which, yeah, I mean, I thought the effects hold up. I don't think there was anything. I mean, obviously there's stuff that you're like, oh, that's 1980 effects, but on the whole,
I think a lot of it is because
yeah.
the ghosts are real. The ghosts are not CG and they're not cartoons, which I think a lot
Mhm.
of ghost type stuff, like even Poltergeist had a little bit of that, of like those kind of cartoon, like the plate glass that they put up when they have the cartoons going over the live action. But this is actually animatronics that are just placed as a plate shot over all this stuff that's happening. Or like the skeleton taxi cab driver, like the gooey zombie guy,
Yep.
he's
Yep.
actually there. It's not like there's a physicality to the ghosts that I think helps it live on. And obviously they all slime everything. So there's slime everywhere. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is a real guy in a suit, but because he's supposed to be silly also, I think that helps.
Yeah.
You look at Godzilla films and it's just like, oh, it's a guy in a rubber suit. It's a little cheesy now. But because the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's supposed to be a ridiculous childhood thing come to life, it kind of gets a pass in your brain. So it holds up a little better for you as you watch it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. Um, I didn't realize that the Stay Puft was supposed to come out of the water in the beginning of the. So when they call him the Stay Puft Man, it was supposed to come out of the water next to the Statue of Liberty, but I guess it was just too hard to shoot, so they couldn't do it. But that's where. But I actually the way they did it works big time.
Right, where
But
he's yeah.
yeah, you see
There's
it walking down, and it's a fake. It's a set. It's a model, but you don't care. It looks good, so you're all
yeah,
into it.
absolutely.
So yeah,
Did
yeah.
you know when he hits the fire hydrant when the Stay Puft or the car hits the fire hydrant as the Stay Puft's walking by and you see that like top down shot, the water coming out of the fire hydrant is actually really fine sand. 'Cause on camera, it
Okay, I
looks
didn't
like
know
water
that.
coming from a model, yeah.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know that. I know that you talked about the opening when they do the books floating and the cards and all that stuff, like when the books are on wires and the cards are being blown by air through the card catalog. So as the drawers come out, there's guys behind there just blowing through tubes and air and shooting all the cards out. So, and that effect looks really good. And it's like,
It
that's,
does.
yeah. And do they do that now? If now that way now? Probably not.
No, even
It's
the cards would
probably,
be CG,
yeah,
and it would look
exactly.
really fake, and
So
you'd be like, "Alright."
yeah, the only time I thought the effects were I was just like, ugh, was when the dog's chasing Tully, or the giant
Oh, the 'cause they're
Beast is Chasing
claymation looks a little
Tully.
silly.
Yeah, just because it's obviously matted on there, and you see, when he runs across the street and it busts out and stuff like that. But still, I still appreciate like when he's in the closet and it's an actual,
Animatronic
giant creature. It's an
puppet or
actual,
whatever, yeah.
yeah, that's fun. That's good. But again, it's 1984. You're doing the best you could back then. So I was fine with everything else. I'm just kind of, I don't want to say I'm nitpicking, but nothing's
Yeah.
perfect.
The only other way to do that, I would think, would be to do kinda like what they did in American Werewolf, where they don't really show it moving most of the time.
Yeah, and we
Because
talked
it'd be
about
really
that
hard to do that,
in
yeah.
our Forgotten Horror 5 season where that one shot down the stairs in where American Werewolf in London I was good with, but then after that it's just it just doesn't work.
It doesn't really hold up, yeah. So the dog
Yeah,
being covered
yeah.
in clothes is like, "Okay, that makes sense." And then
Hmm.
when it has to
Yeah.
get out, it's like, "Well, I guess we claymation it."
Let's talk about the cast. I mean, obviously it's a no-brainer that these four are in this movie and that these were always the intended actors to be played, but that's never the case.
But it wasn't
Go ahead.
always that way.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm sure a lot of people know this already, but for those who don't know, the Zedmore character was actually meant for Eddie Murphy, and he turned it down. The Winston character, he turned it down because he chose to do Beverly Hills Cop, which if you listen to the main show, we've talked about how much of a juggernaut Beverly Hills Cop was when it came out, and it obviously solidified Murphy as a huge star. So I think he chose wisely. But what happened to the role of Winston was that it got rewritten, where he doesn't appear until later in the movie, maybe like 45 minutes into the film, and he's like almost like an afterthought, but just kind of like he's there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He doesn't do a lot, and I never understood. Uh, I never liked it in the scene when they're in the jail. Not the jail. I'm sorry. When they go to, it's either in the jail or when they go to the mayor's office, and Winston like asks for his own lawyer.
Oh,
Do
that's
you know
in
what
the
I
jail
mean?
cell after they
Yeah.
explain everything.
I never got that. And I never liked that because that was further like he already is like an add-on in this
And then you're
movie. Like
furthering
so,
him as not being part of the team.
yeah, and then he's not like you're and I never liked that line of dialogue. And maybe it was just kind of like they just threw it in there. But I don't know how you felt about that, but it just made me feel like he wasn't part of the team.
It does make him seem like he's less of a team, but it kind of makes him seem like if he was brought in earlier, that would make sense because you could be like, I'm seeing the world as a regular person because these three that we've been following are clearly a little unhinged, like each of them in their own way. So he's the one kind of down to earth person going, okay, guys, you want to tell the mayor this? I don't think I want to go back to jail or the loony bin. But yeah, it does make him separate from the team by doing that and being like, okay,
Right.
so you're not with us then.
Yeah, and maybe like I said, maybe it was a throwaway line, so they didn't really think much of it. But it just kind of just made me feel like, oh no, he's not part of the group. What's going on here? Like so, I never liked that. But anyways, that's not the only actor that turned down the role or turned down a role. They're also the role of Lewis Tully was supposed to go to Butler. Who do you know?
John Candy.
That's right. And he he wanted to speak with a German accent and have a pair of Schnauzer dogs with him throughout the movie. And they were like, no. And he was like, "I forget it. I'm not doing this."
Yeah, Reitman was like, I don't think he gets what kind of movie we're trying to make. And I think
Yeah,
after like the first or second conversation, he was like, I'm pretty sure he's a no.
I mean, looking back, obviously that was a good decision because, you know it already. You've lived with this movie for 40 years, so you already know that that's Rick Moranis' role, and
Yeah.
so you kind of like it's not really like
He
it didn't
is
make
Tully,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I
you
can't like
obviously he's
do you want to see the like a big German guy getting locked out of his room after talking to Dana? Like that's probably not even
yeah,
wouldn't have been part of it.
yeah, and then Dana and him, smashing as the kids say these days. Butler.
Exactly. As the as the gatekeeper and the keymaster.
Yeah.
I think it works so much better. Like it just really works with Rick Moranis' character.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So also the Venkman role. So Peter Venkman. So Bill Murray was not the first choice for Peter Venkman. Do you know who the first choice was?
I believe it was John Belushi.
It was
before
John
he passed
Belushi.
away.
Obviously, he passed away. Yeah, so that was meant for John Belushi. That would have been a fascinating character if John Belushi played that. I mean, I love the Blues Brothers, and he is awesome in the Blues Brothers. I mean, he's obviously great in Animal House, but the Blues Brothers is the movie that I always remember John Belushi for. I don't know how he would be as Venkman because obviously Bill Murray brings Bill Murray to that role,
Exactly. Bill
and
Murray is
you
very
know what I
Bill
mean?
Murray. I
Yeah,
think John Belushi's Venkman would be angrier and gruffer. Wouldn't be try
maybe.
I don't
Yeah,
think he'd be as much of a ladies' man. I think he'd be more
I don't know if it was written that
like
way.
a
He might have
grumpy
been
old
written
city
that
man.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see him at the beginning holding those cards up trying to impress the girl. Like, I don't think that's how you would first be introduced to, Belushi's Venkman. Bunch of squiggly
True.
lines. It's just not your day.
For those who remember Ghostbusters Afterlife, and if you know, obviously that's going to come up later on in the series, if it's not already out now, depending upon when you're listening to this. But they obviously the character of Ivo Shandor is in that movie, and it's played by blanking. Uh, he won the Oscar for Whiplash.
Oh, J.K.
Jameson,
Simmons. J.K.
J.K.
Simmons.
Simmons. Yeah, he plays Shandor in Afterlife, but he was meant to be in this film. Same type of character, same guy who built the
The apartment.
skyscraper,
Yep.
right? And that was supposed. Do you know who that was going to be played by?
I actually don't.
Paul Rubens. He was
Oh,
supposed
wait,
to
I did
play
know that.
Ivo
Yes.
Shandor. Yeah, yeah.
That would have
So I
been
saw that. Yeah.
that'd been pretty funny.
Well, I mean, I don't know how he fits into the movie. Obviously, they rewrote it, so because they have in my last bit of casting news, they had Slavica Jovan play the I'm blanking on names tonight, Butler. It's because I'm old. Gozer.
Gozer the
Right,
Gozerian?
yeah.
Gozer the
So
Destroyer?
she has her dialogue, but her accent was too comical, so they dubbed her over with somebody else. They dubbed her over with Patty Edwards, and you probably don't, that name doesn't sound familiar to you, but Patty Edwards plays Flotsam and Jetsam in the Little Mermaid cartoon. So now that you know that, and if you ever watch that animated movie again, you're gonna
Hear that
hear
voice.
you're gonna hear that voice and be like, I know that voice. That's from Ghostbusters. So
I
that was
know
my
those
last.
eels anywhere.
That was my last bit of casting news. So yeah. So what else? What is there anything in this film, Mike, that you? I mean, you've seen it probably so many times, but in this watch, did something pop up that you didn't know before?
I mean,
I think that is a no.
not really. I mean, there's things that, like, I was a little bit more hyper focused on, like the prop work, the set decoration. I was kinda looking at all that. Um, the one thing I like, some of the special effects stuff is new to me. Like, I had never looked that up before, so some of that information is new. But during the watch, there wasn't anything that popped up that was kinda new to me. I was surprised that I always forget because 'cause I've seen it so many other times, the scene when Tully gets, got by the, the dogs.
Oh, yep.
I
At the
always forget
restaurant, outside the restaurant.
there's a scene right before it where Bill Murray plays this drunken homeless guy as Tully's running by, and there's, like, this little comedy scene. I always forget that's not in the actual theatrical cut of the film. So I'm
Ah,
watching, I was
okay.
like, "Where's that scene?" Oh, because 'cause I've seen it on a lot of the other newer DVDs and stuff, have added that in, but it's just a deleted scene there.
Interesting. There was a couple things that I didn't realize. When they this is a small one, but when they get to the police escort, when the mayor's like, "Let me know what you need," and for some reason they need all the National Guard, and Murray comes out of the car window. He's like, "Let's get this moving. Let's get the show on the road," right? And then they drive out. The
Mm.
next shot is of the Ecto One driving, and it's clearly not Bill Murray in the front seat. It's some dude on a walkie-talkie. Like he's like, there's a guy in there. And he's just like this with the walkie-talkie. I'm like, what? Like you couldn't even pretend. Like what is this? So I never noticed that before. The big thing I never noticed is when they are about to cross the streams and they start walking. Maybe it's not when they're crossing the stream. Yeah, maybe I don't know when it is, but when they're going to start firing, And the Bill Murray's like, they get the wands. They pull the wand. They pull the sticks out. They're getting ready. I didn't realize that he says, make them hard. And the wands go up. They have like the phallic
Yeah,
pop
they
up.
go
I didn't
zoop.
realize I never realized he was saying, make them hard. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I never paid attention to that. So I thought that was funny. I mean, I guess that's not so PG.
I mean, almost nothing. Here's the thing that like it wasn't this watch, it was maybe 2 watches ago where I noticed he's just got a needle with a knockout drug in his on his
Oh, the
person as he's
Thorazine
going
stuff.
out. Yeah, as he's going out on a
Yeah.
date with Dana. It's like,
Yeah.
what?
I know. My note is that because people looking back at that don't like that. Contemporary viewers have issues with that because obviously what the drug he's using is used in a lot of cases of date rape. So but back in the 80s, it's the reputation of that drug was that it was a safe, effective way of bringing people down from bad trips, quote unquote bad trips. So, but it's just like people need to understand when the movies are made.
It's just a little odd he has it on his person.
Well, he's a
But,
doctor. Back
yeah,
off,
I'm not
man.
saying
He's a
like, yeah,
scientist.
he's a doctor. He has degrees in both parapsychology and psychology. But he's
Yeah,
more like a
no, but
game
I
show.
mean, for the plot of the movie, he's got it so that we can move it along. So yeah, so that I guess that's a good point, Butler. Do you know the original title and the alternate titles for the movie that they had because they were trying to get permission to use Ghostbusters because I guess something else had Ghostbusters already.
That's why the cartoon show is called The Real Ghostbusters, because they
But
couldn't
the
do it for the
cartoon,
cartoon.
right? Because the cartoon, there was already a cartoon called Ghostbusters that wasn't them. I know that, but I thought that came out after the movie.
I don't remember when the Real Ghostbusters cartoon came out after the movie, but I don't know when
No, I know, but the cartoon that was called Ghostbusters, that because they had to call themselves the Real Ghostbusters, I thought that came out after the movie as well. I didn't realize it was before, so
when
that's
they
why they had to
changed the name.
rename it. But do you know the original title and the alternate titles?
Why don't you go ahead and tell me?
So you don't know. So
I don't know.
the original title was called Ghost Smashers,
I did know that actually.
and the other alternate titles were Ghost Breakers and Ghost Stoppers.
Friggin' terrible, terrible.
Well, thankfully they used Ghostbusters. And this was the highest grossing comedy. We'll go back to that note that you talked about how much it made. It was the highest grossing comedy of all time until 1990.
That's very impressive.
When Home Alone came out, and then that became it. But then Home Alone got beat by Men in Black, and that's when I stopped watching. That's when I stopped looking because then now, like, if you look at the big list, it's all like Marvel films because they're considered comedies, like Guardians and all that
Oh,
stuff.
come on.
No, that's you get the list is like they're like if you look at the list now, Ghostbusters is like 21 or 24, but the rest of the list is all these like action comedy movies that made all this money, and they're just counting them as comedies.
I think that's cheating, but all right. I mean, Men in Black counts. I would even allow Guardians, but once you start like if you're counting Lethal Weapon on that list, I'd be like, come on.
No, I mean you could. It is like an action comedy.
Yeah,
So
but
I mean,
now you're pushing it. But then I've been told that Ghostbusters can't be my favorite comedy because it's not a true comedy either. So I guess
who
it's
told you that?
splitting hairs. Just so there's some people like when it's like, what's your favorite comedy movie? I'm like Ghostbusters. That's not a real comedy. It's like
I mean,
I think it
I can
is.
understand. It's a sci-fi comedy, so I can understand if they're putting the comedy second. But if it's whatever, I mean, because you can't say like you have to start sexing off your genres and be like, oh well, that's not my best romantic comedy. Oh, this is not my best, this is
Right.
not my favorite gross out comedy or my favorite stuff like that. So, but whatever, who cares?
Because that's
Uh,
the thing about
no.
Ghostbusters. I think that changes from when you're a kid to when you grow up. Is I think you mentioned things I noticed more in this rewatch. I think this is the time I noticed that this movie is first and foremost silly, like a comedy, and like everything else just happens to be like. But in order to make that comedy work, it has to be in a grounded, real New York where the ghosts are not necessarily cutesy, wootsy kind of things, other than Stay Puft, obviously. Like that's what makes the silliness and the comedy work. But it's all about getting the laugh. Like everything they do in that film is all about the comedy, not about scaring you, not about the special effects. Everything services the jokes. and the comedy beats and the physical comedy in that movie.
Well, especially the Bill Murray stuff. Bill Murray is out there trying to make one-liners, so I mean, I get that. I think that Aykroyd's trying to work within the the story within the script. His comedy is trying, and the whole idea of Ramis playing Egon, where he never smiles, like that's just funny in and of itself. You know, he's not. It's like he's not trying to be funny. I think Bill. There's no, and
Right.
that's not a knock on anybody. There's just different styles of comedy from the three different characters.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you have Bill Murray there, then you don't need another kind of like another wild man. You need like he's your wild card. The other
Right.
people have to be more straight-laced around him to really make his comedy shine. But you know,
Yeah.
Egon's got some great like when Egon says, "Your mother," and he like goes after him, like finally seeing Egon lose his shit at one point in the movie, like that's awesome. Like I love that part when he actually finally
hmm
loses it.
Do you buy the fact that Dana Barrett would go on a date with Pete Venkman? Even though in Ghostbusters 2, clearly the
It
answer was
didn't work
no
out.
because it yeah.
Well, she did, but it just didn't work out between them.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's charming, he's funny, he's schmoozing, and then he saves her life on the New York's like at that point, it's like, all
True.
right. But I do like in Ghostbusters 2, it kind of follows Sandra Bullock's rule from Speed, where two people can't stay together in a relationship under duress or whatever she says to Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Not that I have any experience with that, but yes.
But yeah, I absolutely buy that. At the point where he saves her life from goes with the Garzarian and Zool, maybe
Mhm.
she owes him a dinner or two. Maybe she feels obligated,
Interesting.
if not just to kind of get him out of her hair.
Right. So we were talking about the box office a little bit. This film was number one for 7 straight weeks at the box office, and I think
That's
it
it.
dropped to two. It dropped. Well, I think it dropped to 2 or 3 or something. And then it came for another after that, another like 5 weeks or something like that. It was at number 1 or number 3 or something. So like it came back a little bit. But this is when movies, the number one for 7 straight weeks at the box office is unheard of these days. Obviously, especially
Oh,
in post-COVID
yeah.
times. But yeah,
These days it would be on Blu-ray and available
yeah.
on digital in 7
Yeah,
weeks.
my note would be so this film was number 1 for 2 straight weeks, and then it was on Hulu for that would be the updated note. Yeah, I mean that's probably going to be like what we talk about with Afterlife and Frozen Empire, like just how quick it's going to leave the
Turnaround
theaters.
is absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I always like to try to get bad reviews so that it pisses you off when we watch this.
Don't give me bad reviews on Ghostbusters.
And I obviously it was very tough to find some, but I did find. But good old Pauline Kael from the New Yorker uh, came through for me. So she had problems with the chemistry among the 3 leads. She praises Murray,
What?
but felt the other actors did not have much material to contribute to the story, and she concluded, quote, Murray's lines fall on dead air. She believed Murray's talents were in service to a film lacking wit or coherence, and she noted that many of the characters had little to do, leaving their stories unresolved as the plot began to give way to servicing the special effects instead. Your response, Butler.
What? Ray and Egon are the things holding up the team. Bill Murray just goes around and just screws around the whole time. Well, they're holding everything together. They service the plot, explain the plot, further the plot, investigate stuff. While Murray just cracks jokes. They're the linchpin to the film. And each of them have their own funny lines in general. It's not just him cracking one-liners, and even Bill Murray's one-liners all service the plot. They're all within like talking about different plot points. Almost, every joke he says, every one-liner that everybody likes in the movies, like represents a certain point that the Ghostbusters are in their journey as they go along. Like, it's just she's so wrong at so many levels. Like, ah, that's just somebody who was so out of touch. She's probably like an old lady when she wrote it. That sounds like the ravings of an older lady.
No, Pauline Kael was probably a little was I don't know. I don't know how old she was in
You know what,
1984,
Pauline?
but
I need to take your film review.
careful, she might be passed away.
Was she gonna come back as a ghost?
Whoa, 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 whoa!
Whoa!
In Frozen Empire.
That's right.
What are you? You're now you're gonna be M Night Shyamalan is gonna write about
Here's,
critics like in
here's the twist.
what was the movie? What was that
Oh,
movie that he did?
something, not the shape in the water.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So she passed away in 2001. So you're safe, Butler. It wasn't recent.
She's not coming
So
after me. All right.
No, 1984. So she was probably, let's see, let me do some quick math here. She was 55. I don't know if that's right. 50. No, she was 65. So yeah, okay. I
Yeah,
guess
I think
you have
she
a
just
point
kinda
there.
added touch with
But she's a
the way
pretty
that cinema was filmed.
established.
Sure.
She's an established critic, so you need to understand that she's accurate. I'm just kidding. But that was the only one I could find. Siskel had some critical stuff about Hudson being a late addition. We talked about that already, so that's yeah, I think
That's
we agree with
absolutely a
that a little bit.
fair
Yeah,
that's a fair comment.
yeah. But I also what I also found, and because this makes me laugh, because I don't think this is the intent of the film, but when you start having academics talk about the movie and what it represents and what
We're gonna do
they
this
think,
again?
yeah, I it it baffles me. I always told my, and I've mentioned him on the main show before. My cinematographer, my best friend, Butler. You're a good friend, but this is my best friend, Adrian Correa, who we always talked about when we would go to film festivals, and I always would joke to him, being like, oh, when we make it is when people come, when we're on stage and they're asking of us about something that we did, like a movie or a short, and they have some kind of wild theory about what it means to them, and and it's just like, maybe it was some kind of shot we did, and we just did the shot because it was cool, but they think something else. And I'm like, that's when you've made it, because it's like people reading stuff into it, and that's part of movies. Like, you get what you get from it, but like this, let me just, so academic Christine Alice Corcos said that Ghostbuster is, quote, a satire on academia, intellectuals, city government, yuppies, tax professionals, and apathetic New Yorkers. Whatever. It's a comedy. It's also, the movie's also not by her, but this whole movie's also been analyzed as an era appropriate example of Republican, libertarian, or neoliberal ideology, in particular Reagan era economics. So Reaganomics is focused on limited government spending and deregulation in favor of free market provided by the private sector of entrepreneurship, profit motives, and individual initiative. What?
That
It's a comedy.
I have actually heard the Reaganomics thing before about this movie.
Have you heard that the ghosts are supposed to be interpreted as analogs for crime, homelessness, pollution, and faltering infrastructure and public services? So
I
Slimer is really about the failure of bridges and tunnels to be repaired properly. Apparently, that's me. That's me saying this.
Oh,
Like,
that's you.
that's what they're saying. Yeah, that's what they're saying. That, pollution is that the cab driver.
I mean, I do think there's something to the fact that Slimer's a glutton. I mean, I think they're all supposed to represent their sins, and ghosts and people come back as, like, the ones that aren't so great come back as gross, deformed things because of their actions. That's what Harold Ramis was getting at. I know that not Harold Ramis, well, Harold Ramis as well, apparently, which I didn't know. But Dan Aykroyd was really in his spiritual phase when he was writing this, and a lot of his bigger script had a lot of spirituality stuff about what the afterlife is like. That's what it is. It's a literal look at the afterlife, is what he was writing about. And then it got
But
kind of
yeah.
pared down, but comedy first. That was his whole thing, which is why he wanted Murray. That Murray got it. That it was, what's the best joke we can tell here within
Mhm.
that
But
kind of
yeah,
framework.
but also his original draft had like teams of Ghostbusters everywhere, like these teams of Ghostbusters in different areas of
It
the world
became like, yeah,
existing.
international.
Yeah,
That was supposed to be
yeah,
Ghostbusters 3, and then Ghostbusters 3 ended up becoming Ghostbusters Go to Hell, and then it ended up not getting made.
hmm,
But they
which
were
I'm
supposed to
surprised,
be
because
Hell York.
I mean, I know we'll get into Ghostbusters 2, and I always assumed Ghostbusters 2 did good business, but
I
I
think
mean,
the reason you don't get a Ghostbusters 3 is Bill Murray was hesitant to do it, and then his falling out with Ramis, I think, killed it.
yeah,
And it's like
well,
studios, if they weren't in, studios were like, shying away from it.
he only did this movie based upon if Columbia would finance the Razor's Edge remake that he wanted to do. So they said okay, and that's why he did this film. And of course, The Razor's Edge bombed because nobody wants to see Bill Murray in a serious role. And there you go. And so I mean, I guess good that they got him for this film, because this is the bigger film.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah.
Sometimes you gotta roll that dice.
What else you got for me? I mean, I got little notes here and there that I can kind of go in and out, but there's something that we haven't covered that you want to cover.
Um, I mean, the one thing we talk about a lot on the podcast is in previous episodes is I hate when New York doesn't look like New York.
Hmm.
And I think the one thing that not the one thing this movie does almost everything right is that it does feel like New York, but at the same time, it feels a little different than New York in most films because I think the way they filmed this one, maybe it's just me watching this in this rewatch. New York film felt really open. It didn't feel as, closed off and narrow streets and buildings on either side of you. A lot of the shots, like in front of the firehouse, are just these wide angle shots or looking up so you could see more sky than you would usually see. Or the Ghostbusters, like that famous shot of them running down the street during their Rise to Fame marathon or a montage, and they're running down the
Right, right,
street,
right.
a wider shot, so they're a little further away, so you get this wider angle of it. They go to the
Hmm.
hotel, which is obviously huge. They're in a lot of, and obviously it starts with them at the university where they're on campus grounds. It's a much wider view of New York than I think I'm used to seeing in a lot of films because obviously a lot of films try to be that street level New York where
Hmm.
and some films do it right when they're in New York and it looks like New York. But this film, I think, does it in a different way where they present New York as this wider, more open landscape than I've seen in most films.
Well, the interiors were shot in L.A. and the exteriors were in New
Oh,
York.
sure,
So
yeah.
yeah, which kind of I think adds that to that a little bit because like her apartment, it's like
Our
that's
apartment would be no
yeah,
cellist is that.
yeah. So that was a little like, and even like I get it. It's the city, and it's even like the furniture felt West Coast. So I mean, now that's not saying that her furniture is not gonna. No one's gonna have that type of furniture in New York, but her furniture felt West Coast. Like it just, I don't know, it had that vibe.
Her
You know, it
furniture
was
felt, yeah, very like East, like like West Coast upper class.
like
What
Tully's
you would
apartment
see if
was tight. Like Tully's apartment
yeah.
was a tight apartment.
She had the nice
Um,
penthouse with the corner
mhm,
windows kind of a thing.
right.
But the firehouse looked good, and the firehouse had, like, obviously because they had no money,
Hmm.
ripped up couches and fold out chairs and stuff. That looked kinda New York.
And those shots you're talking about where they're running, I believe those are the shots that they're doing without permits. They're just on the street
Yeah,
doing
they had
stuff.
no permits, it's just
So
Ivan Reitman on the
so
camera.
yeah. So he's probably doing a wide shot so he can get it all and not miss anything. So that's probably that probably adds to what you're talking about, how it's a bigger feel of New York, like it's a bigger size.
Right.
Um,
It was
did you
also
see
shot in
the
Steadicam, which might be,
which
part of
part?
it.
That whole thing?
Most of the movie was shot on Steadicam with Ivan Reitman wanted to try, but it was kind of new at the time, apparently, he said.
Hmm.
And that shot where they're running down the street, without a permit was the first time he filmed them, in costume. And he said,
Hmm.
in an interview, I mean, who knows if this is actually what he was thinking, but he says in this interview that took place, 30 years later, after I said cut, after they were running down the street, and I looked at that footage on the monitor, I was like, this might be a movie that's going to make some money. This might be an actual big
Yeah,
film here.
he
But
felt good
hindsight,
about it. That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah. He's probably thought that to himself, but didn't want to tell anybody. Oh, this is gonna be really good. Don't say anything. So maybe it's just like
Jinx it.
that.
He's a piece of shit. Do it again.
Did you see the note about William Atherton getting hate mail or just being like people not liking him because he was the bad guy in this movie?
I did not, but that doesn't surprise me. He must have gotten a bunch of that for Die Hard too. You almost killed John McClane.
He was like, yeah, I guess he became reviled and like he was upset about it, like so much so like I guess he couldn't go into a bar without people trying to pick a fight with him. And then like if he's walking down like Seventh Avenue, I guess one he was walking down Seventh Avenue and like I guess he heard all these children yelling at him, "Hey, Dickless!" like as he's walking down.
I
So
mean,
poor
he's
William
just
Atherton.
I mean, I can see the kids not getting it, but adults, I mean, he's a freaking actor, man. It's just a role.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that between this and Die Hard, like I think that like obviously
Real,
he's
real
in huge
genius too.
movies, but oh, yep. But he just got pigeonholed as just like this douche and like that's all he played from then because like he's not in Sugarland Express, which is obviously toward the beginning of his career,
Yeah.
he's the complete opposite of a douche. And
Yep.
like like from here on out, it was just like, this is it, man. This is your
I don't
thing.
even I don't even know what he did after. like Die Hard. I don't remember him anything. I'm sure if I go back and look at his IMDb page, I'm sure he's got a ton of credits.
You'll see stuff that he was in, and he's in like he's done guest top shops and guest
Yeah.
spots and get TV shows and stuff. But yeah,
Mhm. I never so when he gets hit with the marshmallow, which is like which is like shaving cream, at the end of he gets the big shaving cream on him and the big marshmallow, he's actually yelling, "I hate you, Venkman," which I never knew. But you can't understand
oh,
it
is he?
because yeah, so he's supposed to be yelling, "I hate you, Venkman," but you just hear that scream at the end.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah. So
Well,
I guess
apparently
I
he
get
didn't know he was going to be covered in that much shaving cream. I guess the special effects guys were running, so it must have been second unit, and they were like, "Hey, could you just stand here for a second?" And they dumped it, and they were talking about how it's not whipped cream, it's shaving cream, and it actually weighs a lot. It is not fun to get hit with it. And when they dumped the vat on him, he was, I guess, pissed at the special effects guys, so they all kinda left the studio and just like, "All right, yep, we're done. We got our shot. Let's go."
maybe he was a jerk then.
Maybe.
Or Bill Atherton. Bill, we're sorry. We still like you in this movie.
He's awesome in this movie.
Um, he is. Of course he is. I mean, I could play a jerk real good. Like I could if there were like, Mike, do you want to be in a movie? What do you want to do? Like make me play an asshole. I'll play an asshole. I could do it. Like it's just some people can do it. And so usually, it's usually the good guys. So I'm a good guy, obviously. That's what I'm saying here.
Absolutely.
Of course. Of course. Um I guess this is something else I probably should have brought this up when we talked about stuff I just learned in this watch. When Peter Venkman goes to the date for Dana, um, when she's possessed, he doesn't know that. So when he knocks on the door, he's actually tapping the Terminator theme when he knocks on the door. He's doing do 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 like he does that when he
On
knocks on.
purpose?
Go back on purpose. Go back and watch that. He's doing the Terminator theme.
Okay.
So there you go. There's a new one for you because I should have brought that up
Yeah,
before.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, normally in a show, I usually ask you why it's forgotten, but that's not what the show's about.
Yeah, 'cause it's not forgotten. It'll never be
No,
forgotten.
exactly. So I mean, I think that we've covered this movie fairly well. I don't have my opinion did not change of this film. Obviously, I know it does not change. You did not. Your opinion did not change as well too.
I
It's
probably
a
watched
great
this film
film,
easily over 100 times.
classic film, 40-year anniversary. So if you haven't, if it's before June 8th, then maybe you should make a date to watch it on June 8th this year, because then you'll be watching it. It's actual 40th anniversary of 2024. So I recommend that, and maybe I'll do that. I mean, my kids have already seen this film, so it's not really like I'm not sharing it with anybody.
Maybe we could do a movie live stream for the
Yeah,
patrons.
you're always. Since Patreon is new, uh, I have yielded. I've told Butler that I am leaning on him to all this stuff. So whatever
Oh,
he
geez,
suggests,
the
I'm
onus
just going
on
to be
me.
like, "Yep." Not at all. Not at
Oh,
all.
I thought
Because
you'd
I
be
don't
like, "So
know.
if something goes wrong with Patreon, you know
No, no, no,
exactly."
no, no, no. When you have an idea or when you want to do something, you think something's going to work, I'm just going to be like, "Yeah, that's fine. Let's go." If you think it's going to work, let's do it. Because I don't know, and I'm glad that I don't know, because I'm allowing you to like run with it. So I think that's great. I'm giving you ownership, as I'd like to say in the corporate world.
Does it come with a raise?
uh,
That's for your personal growth.
sure. All right, so I guess we'll just wrap it up. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, check out. I'll let Butler do the whole Patreon pitch, but I would say look out for Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife, after Answer the Call, Afterlife, and then eventually Frozen Empire. Hopefully, we're going to be doing a couple other movies. But Butler, why don't you end it and kind of do your little pitch thing, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, this is a little different because this is only on
Yeah,
Patreon. So thank you guys for subscribing. Obviously, there's depending on what tier you are, check out stuff if you guys want to go to the higher tier. If you guys think what we're doing is worth it to jump up, or just tell your friends about the Patreon. Let them know, how much you liked these episodes. If you like, hey, I know you don't like Forgotten Cinema because they talked about these older movies, but they just did Ghostbusters. If you want to hear them talk about the new ones on the Patreon, it's only a few bucks a month. The $3, $5. It's not that much. Thank you for being a subscriber. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for, helping Forgotten Cinema grow and for being a part of the community. So that's
that's a
my
big thing. I think. Yeah, I think that's a big thing why I was like, yeah, let's do this, because I wanted to, we started the group in Facebook, and that goes okay, but I really wanted us to build like a movie community where we could just sit around and talk about films and movies all the time, because I don't get to do that enough. I don't think that's done enough. I think people just watch something and move on to the next one.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I think that I really like the idea of having a place where we can all come together and just talk about films and movies. And if you want us to cover something, we'll cover something. And if you want an opinion on something, we'll tell you what we thought. But like we talked about before, it's not about who's right or wrong. It's just about the discussion. And that's what we just love, talking film. We joke around, obviously. Butler and I always exaggerate our anger at each other when we're talking about the film, because that's for the show, that's the entertainment. And we
Absolutely.
may joke around and say something here and there, but it's always just with a tongue in cheek. It's always just with fun. So, but thanks for listening to just everything that Butler said, and keep your eye out for new stuff.
That's right.